So for the panel discussion, the moderator of the panel discussion is Dr. Abdur. He's the CEO of WRCB. The first panelist we have is Mr. Krishnan Neelkanthan. He's the partner at Ankur Capital. It is an early-stage venture capital fund that invests in entrepreneurs with transformative technologies, opening up large markets, including agri-tech, food, education, skill development, healthcare, fintech, and other areas. At Ankur Capital, he works on new investments, supports portfolio companies, and jointly drives the organization's growth initiatives. Our next panelist is Dr. Chandrasekhar Nair. He is the director and CTO at Molbio Diagnostics Private Limited, one of India's leading healthcare companies in the in vitro diagnostics segment, and the manufacturer of the renowned molecular diagnostic platform, TrueNat, real-time PCR. Dr. Nair was awarded the Infosys Prize 2021 in Engineering and Computer Science for his development and large-scale commercialization of TrueNat, a new point-of-care testing platform for PCR-based medical diagnostics. Our next panelist is Dr. Manahar Koligal. He is the head of the innovation cell at Siemens Healthineers Center for Innovation in Diagnostics, India. His team focuses on developing novel diagnostics, leveraging in-house competency and capability, and partnerships with externals, including clinicians, institutes, and funding agencies. Previously, he was the head of the research group of technologies for precision medicine at Siemens Healthineers India. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Arindam. We have already introduced him, so I would not take that time off. He is from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And lastly, Mr. Rishabh Chopra from Path at South Asia. He's also delivered a talk, so I wouldn't take time introducing him again.
Hello. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I think we have had an excellent day so far. I think it's about to get even better. I would like to welcome all of our panelists on your behalf. We have a fantastic panel this afternoon. We have Krishnan from Ankur Capital, who presents the VC perspective. We have Dr. Chandrasekhar Nair from Molbio Diagnostics, which is the largest molecular diagnostics company in India. We have Manohar, Dr. Manohar from Siemens Healthineers, which is an institution with more than 100 years of history in innovation, medtech innovation. And to represent the healthcare delivery, we have Rishabh Chopra from Path, and we have Dr. Arindam for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So the format this afternoon, I have a set of discussion points that I will be introducing to our panelists, and post which, if time permitting, we will open up the floor for the audience as well. Dr. Ray this morning was the high rate of failures for healthcare innovations. And I suspect one of the reasons for that is, of all the interdisciplinary things, probably diagnostics is right up there, right? You've got biochemistry, you've got molecular biology, you've got electronics, you've got the complexities and failure points of all other technologies, completely physically rooted technologies. On top of it, you have added chemistry and biology, and all of them have to work together, which is a very unique challenge. And no wonder the failure rates are very high. And patience is also, this is a long-run game, and you need to be extremely patient. So given the complexity, the technologists, the funders, the healthcare delivery partners, all of them have to come together. And this is too much for one person to actually scale on their own. So we have experts from different domains this afternoon for the panel. And what I request from them is to share their journey as to what interested them in healthcare, how did they come upon the problems that they have solved in their lives, and what are the key learnings from reflecting on their experiences.
Yeah, hi. So I represent Ankur Capital, and as an early stage VC fund, our focus and our theme has always been about trying to tackle the hard problems. And what I mean by that is that we were looking at where there were large, fragmented, and unorganized market opportunities, right, which could be opened up through technology. So when we started investing back in 2004, 14, we did look at a few opportunities in the healthcare space. Clearly, we were looking at what were those white spaces, could anything be opened up with technology. So we invested at that time through the fund in one was a company which had a low-cost model for eye care in the Northeast, which was obviously very much a white space as far as eye care was concerned. Similarly, we invested in a hybrid telemedicine model for rural India. They were working in states like rural Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana. So again, places where there was a severe lack of access to good quality primary health care. And then we took the next step of saying that all of this is in the services space and you need many things to make it to work. But on the ground, you're also struggling with basic qualified healthcare personnel to make this work, right? And that's when we chanced upon our third investment, which was a company called Niramai, which is an early stage detection of breast cancer, using thermography with an overlay of AI. So in a way, what you are saying is, hey, there is how can you get that cognitive load off the system to the extent possible and have an early stage, early detection, modality that would really work as a screening tool for places where mammography and all other technologies cannot go, right, from an access perspective. So I think that's what our journey has been like, to say that, how are these markets large? Can technology make a significant difference, whether it is information technology enabled to deliver all of this, and whether it is actually high IP technologies, be it on devices or biotech from a diagnostic perspective. We're currently on our second fund, and we've closed one more investment there, which is in the connected care, continuum care. So again, a tech-enabled platform for NCDs, particularly cardiovascular. And the last is something we are not yet closed, but really looking at very closely in the diagnostic space, right? Alternate molecular diagnostics, platform. Thank you.
Is this on? You can hear me. Hi. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be back at IIT Mumbai. I wanted to join this institute, but I was not good enough. In fact, I knew I was not good enough, so I did not even write the entrance exam. And I heard a earful from my father for that reason. But we started Big Tech Labs in the year 2000. So I think Satya referred to me as Big Daddy. I think Old Daddy is a better word. But we started with the aim that we would work on emerging technologies in diagnostics. It's as vague as it gets, isn't it? So no wonder nobody wanted to fund us. Of course, there was nobody there to fund us at that point in time. And we started looking at accurate glucose sensing using an amperometric MEMS-based sensor. And it was a great experience, which went nowhere. First of all, it allowed us to set up a team together, a multidisciplinary team. We just heard about the challenges of having multiple disciplines together. Then it taught us about the patent and IP ecosystem. And just to let you know, I met Sanmina. I saw a slide on Sanmina earlier today. Went there and saw in one of their plants 3 different glucometers and strips being manufactured for 3 completely different manufacturers. Completely lights out manufacturing, not a single soul to be seen. And understood that those were completely depreciated plants. And here I was trying to make an amperometric glucose sensor. It was not that glucose sensing strips were cheap, and it was not cheap not because they could not make it cheap. There was an opportunity and they leveraged that opportunity to sell it. So I realized that pricing and all of those things could be very different thought processes. It's not just cost of goods. Thirdly, we heard about IP, and we were referred back to the IP, and we figured out that the IP for a MEMS-based glucose sensor was a landmine. There was not a single product. I don't think there is a single product in the market even today. But the IP existed. So In terms of freedom to operate, I don't know. Maybe in India we could have still got it, but that is not what we wanted to do. So with these learnings, we pivoted, as is a new word I've learned recently, to molecular diagnostics, to PCR. And the reason I was interested in PCR is, see, I'm an engineer by training, and I saw this technique that has very high sensitivity and very high specificity. And I worked in a research lab trying to do PCR. When it worked, it was absolutely brilliant. But you essentially needed a PhD to run a PCR. And therefore, it was something that was only in research labs. In fact, when we started looking at PCRs, there were, I think, 5 or 6 PCRs in clinical diagnostic labs across the country. Okay. In 2005, we had our first version that I was able to show CSIR that if you support us, the immediately program that is, we would be able to deliver something. And of course, till then it was a very interesting period. But when we demonstrated that we could actually do something with a low temperature co-fired ceramic chip, CSIR's immediately program gave us not just a soft loan, but also the ability to be mentored by people like GP, N.K. Ganguly, Mohan Rao, some of the best thinking minds in the country. And what we got from them was supreme confidence. They were more confident about us than we were about ourselves. And that helped us accelerate that program. In fact, I think we were the first program that finished our targets in 3 years rather than 5. And therefore, we were given an additional funding to now demonstrate clinical relevance of this. And we started with hepatitis B viral load for the next 2 years. It was an interesting target because till then, when people used to ask me about sample preparation, I used to wonder why are they jealous of the fact that I'm making some progress on PCR. So it's nice to be an ostrich, isn't it? So then we started looking at how do you prepare a blood sample, and eventually we came up with a prep platform that is sample agnostic, that can be low cost, that's possible to run in the field, battery operated, etc. A lot of technology went into all of those. I'm not talking about technology because all of you know technology. We finally came to a stage where we were told that TB could be a very good target. And that was the time when I met Sriram. Sriram was somebody who had created a very large company called Tulip Diagnostics, delivering to the world at that point in time from India. And they had, let us say, more than half the market share for something like malaria diagnostics and HIV diagnostics worldwide at that point in time. And here was somebody who understood the regulatory ecosystem, understood what was manufacturing, etc., understood what it would take for us. And I think today's talks have been so beautiful in telling us that there are so many times when we don't know so many things. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, I think it is good not to know. Because if somebody tells you all of these things upfront, as is happening very often nowadays, I worry that entrepreneurs worry about exit. They don't focus on the problem. They want to get out as quickly as possible. So anyhow, subsequent to all of those, we started working on TB, got immense support from DBT, ICMR, some amazing support from people in the system. And we got an India approval for TB in 2017. Subsequently, the program started evaluating it. Okay. And we got an approval and an order for supplying to the National TB program in 2019. That was just after we got WHO approval for our platform. Again, a very massive validation effort across multiple countries. In fact, I think we have been one of the most validated platforms because I think 100,000 samples at least, if I'm not mistaken, across all the validation studies that got us these things. And that was because there was disbelief that an Indian product can actually do something. I'm sorry to say this, but every single part of our our platform was dissected multiple times over to find why it could fail. And that helped us. That we took it as a positive feedback, and we have learned from all of those feedback. 2020, we had COVID, and we had a test ready for COVID. We had a large order from the National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. We had to deliver 1,512 devices, so we were rushing to scale. More importantly, we had to deliver 6 million tests, so we were absolutely rushing to scale. Consumable manufacture. It's amazing when you have to mass manufacture a microfluidic or a mesofluidic consumable. That allowed us to cater to COVID despite some of the supply chain bottlenecks that we had. And today we have nearly 6,500 devices worldwide. We have nearly 22 million tests run on our platform so far. We are global. We are implementing the national programs of 14 countries. We are present in 35 countries as of today.
Thank you, Chandra. Hi, I'm Manohar. I'm part of a group called Center for Innovation in Diagnostics within Siemens Healthineers. And to answer your question, how our journey has been, well, the group is not 100 years old, even though the company is. So we started primarily initially to kind of focus on what are the unmet needs in healthcare that Siemens has traditionally not focused on. And the group has been in existence for about 12 years now. And we looked into a variety of areas, including maternal mortality, fetal mortality, maternal care, a lot of in vitro diagnostic devices which were not quite there in the market at a particular price point. Tried a foray on developing products very specific to the India market. And what we realized is the India market size, at least for some of these product lines, were not really big enough to justify the investment costs. So we kind of made a foray into identifying what would be niches for us to work upon. And we primarily are oriented ourselves as an applied research group focusing only on developing concepts and showing feasibility of these concepts for various healthcare needs. What do I mean by that? Primarily, we take ideas, realize how these ideas could be meeting clinical needs. So the clinical need is something which is first and foremost for us. What is the unmet clinical need? What is the clinical value that is desired if a product existed? And then we try to look into what kind of technologies would possibly be applicable. Being part of a large company has its own disadvantages because a large company has its own processes for everything. And innovation is something which is not really process bound. So we kind of deliberately take some kind of allowances, asked, sometimes not solicited, just to kind of make sure that our path gets unimpeded and we kind of progress on a particular idea. So that's been our nature of work. We are a multidisciplinary group. We realize we can't do everything by ourselves. So in addition to the multiple disciplines that we have from sciences, engineering, and data scientists, we also work with other partners, primarily clinicians. So we have relationship with the top hospitals, primarily to get clinical insights, get clinical validation for our ideas, and some of the feasibility concepts that we have. So that's been our journey. The primary goal, that is, we develop concepts. Like what Chandrasekhar mentioned, some of the hurdles, we are not quite fully capable of doing it by ourselves as a team. We are a small team, and we don't want to chew up more than what we can handle. And we reach out to other partners, either in India or globally, who could help us on certain things. Thank you.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So there are two parts to the story. One is I'll talk about my personal journey, how I came here, and the other is the organization. So I was a very confused chap when I was in graduation, and someone was asking me non-medical, non-engineer, non-research, what did I do? I did a BSc in physics, chemistry, and maths. from Delhi University, and that's all the science I studied. After that, I landed up into a financial research company, analyzing stocks, equity research, and I did that for 4 years, and I realized this is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And confused people often do MBAs. So I did an MBA in strategy from Hyderabad. It was a 1-year course, and that's where at the end of the journey I realized that I either want to be in the education or healthcare space in general and in the development sector. So I got picked up by a consulting company called Untitled where we looked at problems for development sector organizations, and that's where my journey started with consulting to the Gates Foundation in India, and we were looking at tuberculosis and how the National TB program engages with the private sector. What are the challenges with private healthcare providers in urban slums? And worked on a model, and that path got some grant to do here in Mumbai. So I was here from 14 to 2017, working in the slums of Mumbai, talking to TB patients, private healthcare providers, and district TB officers who were looking at part of the program. And then I think I've stuck around with Path for almost 8 years now, where I see myself as not from this sector, but I end up working a lot with doctors, policymakers, public health experts, and I try to bring a perspective which they do not generally think about. And from a Path perspective, that's what we do. We make connections in very simple terms from private sector, which is the private donors, the industry, and the private healthcare providers, to the government programs. So in India, of course, globally, we are known to be a not-for-profit that also develops a lot of innovative products in partnership with industry and academic institutes. And in India, of course, the focus is how we can work with the government to improve the service delivery and planning of so many different disease control programs, and also identify the challenges at the grassroots level. And also, we work a lot with private healthcare providers for a TB program, and we've leveraged those lessons to inform innovators as well as programs who want to engage with the private sector from public health sector. So that has been the journey, and we'll share some of the lessons that have emerged. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Good afternoon. I will probably say something from the other end of the prism, because not only I'm not an innovator, but also probably I'm the only physician in the panel, if I'm not wrong, though my family does not accept that. Molbio may be the most validated company in the world. I'm probably the most validated physician in the world, because whenever there is a health problem in family and they need clinical advice, and if I say something, obviously they go to my friends and validate it. Even a single, antibiotic dose, no, you are overdosing it. So anyway, I started, nothing exciting in the government health service long back in, I think it's early 90s. And your post-graduation choice takes you, determines your field, something by choice, something by chance. So from that, I got deputed to a project called India Population Project 8 under World Bank. It's mainly for the urban slum populations. It was operational in 4 cities, Calcutta, Hyderabad, Delhi, and Bangalore. And fascinating things you actually discover when you go to the slums. Being from a very, humble middle-class background, you belong almost nowhere. You neither know the extreme end of, and you also don't know the kind of the poverty-afflicted actual real-life situations. So talking about innovations, diagnostics, simple public health interventions, how they fail. You know about this iodization of salt, right? This is a big public health intervention, but very simple intervention, and you are intervening at a kind of a food fortification at the source. Problem is, if you don't keep the salt container lid closed, you lose it. The iodine content gradually gets reduced because it attracts moistures, as simple as that. But this is so simple health education and kind of a little bit of supervision, little bit of motivating the families. We did simple things, carried iodine test kits and showed to the families, okay, this is the salt, and from the local grocery shop who is selling that salt. So this is the salt I just buy, and this is the salt you have in your kitchen. Look at the difference. So just looking at the, the difference in the blue colors, they can realize, okay, so something is wrong. And it is nothing wrong in the kitchen, simple practice. So I'm just saying that, so those kind of, that's, how I started learning about, small things, not even high tech, but very simple, these kind of things probably make a big change. And if you can implement it at scale. When I went to WHO, I was long time for the polio project. You have heard about, I was discussing during lunch break about these vaccine valve monitors. Many of you probably know about it. It's a time temperature indicator, gate supported. I didn't know at that time, through path. It's a patented technology, of course, but it's very simple with the, simple at the end user level, looking just at the, the color change, again a color change of a label. And health worker, even a volunteer, even a mother, even an illiterate person can decipher whether the vaccine is usable or not. That's only you need to know. Imagine the impact of that solution, how much wastage it can reduce, how much lives it can save by indicating whether the vaccine is potent and safe to use or not. So when I came to Foundation in 2014, one of my first projects to handle was a solution. Everybody is familiar, I think, with CoWIN now, the digital platform through which you have to register for your COVID vaccination. Probably some of you may be knowing that this CoWIN is built on the backbone of a previous solution, supply chain solution, IT solution, which is known as EVIN, Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. That was my first project in the Gates Foundation. We started with a very small, at that time it was a small startup in Bangalore, Logistemo, with a Corona Trust. It's an NGO in the Bangalore city. And it's again a small slum population where they used to conduct the vaccination clinics. Now, we are just, it's a kind of a proof of concept kind of a thing. And I was all along the way, how the vaccine flows, because in the polio program, I was kind of mostly in Bihar, UP, West Bengal, where the cases were most. And okay, tell me a funny story. So you know about all these high-tech cold chain equipments, and later on I can say about a little bit of more innovations. But when I went to Bihar, say in 2000s, there was no electricity, even to run a normal refrigerator. So the entire cold chain was dependent on hiring part-time cooling from the ice cream factories. And one of our jobs was to ensure that those ice cream factories are not cutting corners. They are actually getting you the frozen ice packs, through which, throughout the day, you can actually keep the vaccines usable. So during the night time, those ice cream factories have to actually freeze your ice packs. And I used to visit those ice packs during the dead of the night, at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, just to check whether they're doing it or not. So they simply, through the brine solution chambers, they dip the ice packs in the gunny bag. But then, depending on the brine solution concentration, of course, it will depend how cool that would be. So maybe your ice pack surfaces are frozen, but deep inside it's just water. So it will not hold good under the scorching sun during the day when the worker is going house to house. So we need hard frozen ice packs, at least for the campaigns. So how to know the concentration of the brine solution? And I don't have I'm not an engineer, and I don't have any high-tech solution. So I devised a simple potato test. If you dip a potato and if it floats, that means brine solution is well concentrated enough. So I'm just saying sometimes probably those kind of things. But anyway, coming back to the Evin story, so starting from the Corona Health Trust, what we got is a kind of a prototype, a proof of concept kind of a solution. But it was, I was feeling, I mean, we have to test it in real life situations, not, I mean, the Corona Trust slum catchment area is a kind of a, you can say, almost a kind of a clinical trial, much more controlled. So we then did the trial in two most hardest districts in UP, the Bareilly and Shahjahanpur. And we packaged it. At that time, it was just known as logis tumor solution. But then we packaged it as Evin, as you know right now. And we brought in other partners actually to manage it. What we found out, it's just not that product which is essential. What is essential is the combination of the three Ps, the people, process, and product. So nobody used to maintain the temperature registers in a very specific way. Somebody have a kind of a cheat sheet. Somebody have a register. Somebody just have it in head. Now you need to standardize those processes first. Then your product actually can have a place there. So after Bareilly Shahjahanpur thing, it was kind of a, you can say almost kind of, I will not say kind of a RCT way, but it was rigorously tested and trialed against the usual practices, which then got the, I mean, there was some kind of a policy debate within the government, but somehow we got partnership with Gavi, and then it got scaled up. I think it's the largest public health intervention that Gavi ever has funded in any country. It's a 68 million project. And so Evin actually now gives you the granular visibility, starting not only the stock, also of the temperature excursions of every vial from every equipment of the cold chain equipment of the country. There is a probably misplaced doubt about the health of the cold chain of the country. In the public sector, I think India is one of the global leader. Private sector probably may be weak, at least in that respect. So anyway, I mean, glad to share more. So that even now kind of transformed into COVID. So you had the vaccine registry, now you have the vaccinee registry. Hopefully that may lead to. Sorry for the longer anecdotes. Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. So I think the lesson here is that next time we should schedule for 2 hours of panel discussion, right? So many interesting thoughts. And so in the interest of time, we have a lot of young scientists, entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs, innovators of tomorrow. This question is to the technologist. Clayton Christensen says, skate to where the puck will be, not where it is, right? Look towards the future. So as technologists, in 2030, what do you think diagnostics is going to look like? So as a young person, scientist, looking at what should I be committing my life to for the next 10 years, 15 years, what are the areas that should be looking at?
I think we will see a lot more connected platforms. We will see a lot of health monitoring, which is possibly even done subconsciously. Mics for some reason. Yeah, hello? Yeah. Which is possibly not even done, not even thinking about how we are measuring many of these health parameters. I think that is where we will go to. We will create a clinical picture that you can take an informed decision on. And I think a lot of transition towards wearables would be there to pick up some information that we have today. We will see a lot more diagnostics, possibly not necessarily to be actioned at home. And I think we should worry about that, because as a community, we are from India, we are the experts at self-doctoring and self-medication. And I think most of India's kidney failure today, acute kidney injury cases today are because of our confident handling of our own bodies. And I think that will be something that we will be conscious of as a community, and we'll see a lot of connected data points that can build a clinical picture.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, you asked about 20,
2030, yeah.
2030. I think it's too far out. My only advice is for people who have been in the morning, they should have probably paid attention to what Satya said. I think that's true for all people who are passionate about the ideas and they want to take it further into a product. And I will not belabor all the points that he mentioned. But I do agree with what Chandra said, and we did see a glimpse of what Anurag presented today. Digitalization is going to be key, I think, in terms of how services are getting delivered and how data is also going to be stored, interpreted, used for decision making, and that's an area where I think probably worth focusing on, developing ideas, but not just for the sake of data, but also being cognizant about what does the healthcare industry really needs. He spoke about the dangers of self-administration of things, but it's also about how do you interpret diagnostic tests. Simple ones we are probably used to, but we should not get into a rut of kind of making measurements all the time and getting vexed about it. So leaving the interpretation to others who are probably trained in it is probably important. So I do see a lot of things moving away from the clinic into decentralized settings, and that's something which many entrepreneurs should be wary of, and also be alert about trying to provide solutions. At the same time, learning when to drop an idea and when to persist with it is something which is easily said but very difficult to experience and go through. But I think...
I mean, on that point, are there any filters, broad filters the person can actually apply and say, like, should I drop it, should I go through, or is it a very personal decision for everybody?
Well, I can only talk about from my experience. I think in general, before you start off an idea, really understand what is the clinical value that it's likely to meet. And has that particular value, does it still exist? So you need to constantly check whether that initial set of assumptions that you made when you conceived the idea and took it, does it still exist? Does the market potential exist? Or something has disrupted technologically what that particular unique proposition was before when you started. So to be cognizant about it, people also mention about maintaining a network, keep talking about it, because you'll also always get some sane advice from people who are a bit disconnected to the nitty-gritties of what you're doing. And that's something to be considered and valued. That's what I would say.
Super, thank you so much. I will do one last question. Doctor, do you have to be, can we have, yeah, right away? Okay, sure. I'll do one rapid fire. This is, if any value can be placed on this question, this is $1 billion, probably even more. So what would you tell your 15-year-old self, right? This comes in many different formats. The reason I'm asking this, you got young scientists, entrepreneurs sitting here. What are the things that you would do differently if you were to go back and do it? Some very, very broad lessons for life as to how to be an innovator effectively. Very briefly.
I don't know whether I'll do anything differently. I think it is fine to just do things. One thing that possibly I would do is pay more attention in class. Maybe that would have helped.
Well, yeah, I would just say be open to learning from your own mistakes and then moving on.
It's interesting. I mean, if we look back, even 10 years back, 2012, Facebook was there, WhatsApp wasn't there. I mean, look how the world has changed in the last 10 years and last 2 years due to COVID. So where we go 8 years from now, going forward as well, the world changes around you. So it's just the basic principles, the fundamentals of human nature. You need to preserve that, right? Learning from other individuals, being open to feedback, and I think learning, figuring out when to stop doing something. And I think saying no, Anurag talked about in the morning, it's a very important point, saying no to yourself as well as others around you.
Yeah, follow your heart.
I would say don't take shortcuts, especially this is a space, and I think Mr. Chandrasekhar and everyone has talked about how long the journey is, and as investors, what we see is the classic, tussle between the fact that an early stage entrepreneur can get into the market with a half-baked product and get some revenue, but they probably will never get to the next level if they are not actually building for a global quality product. So, and at least I'm encouraged by the very fact that we are all sitting in this table, that there are pieces of it that are falling in place, right? Which are helping people to get to the communities they have to address, help build the ecosystem, etc. So I think that's where I would leave it.
All right, thank you so much. All of these are very, very important people. There are places they needed to be, but they have taken the time to be here with us and share their views and perspectives for that. I'm immensely thankful to all of you. Thank you so much.